Finance and Budgeting Committee meeting for Monday, October 2nd, 2023 will please come to order. We'll give the members just a moment to get to the seats and then we'll call the roll. Okay, the clerk will please call the roll.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll for Mr. Miller,
Here.
Mr. Tuma, Mr. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Schron,
Here.
Mr. Kelly, Ms. Turner. Ms. Turner is absent at the moment. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. And item number 3 on the agenda is public comment. Has anybody signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Thank you very much. The next item is to deal with the minutes from the January or July 10th, 2023 meeting. Do we have a motion relative to those minutes?
Move to adopt?
Is there a second? Second. Been moved and seconded. First by Schron and second by Tuma to approve the minutes for the July 10th, 2023 meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. The ayes have it and the minutes are approved. Before we start on our agenda item, I would just like to make everybody aware that that next week we are going to be starting the biennial budget process, which is going to run from next week through the first week in December. The budget will be introduced into the council meeting on Tuesday the 10th, a week from tomorrow, and on the following day on Wednesday the 11th at 1 p.m. we'll have our first budget session that afternoon, in which the director will give an overall presentation of the overall budget, the changes, the major initiatives, the 5-year capital plan, and such things. We're expecting to receive the budget books from the administration by the end of the week, so that that you will have time over the weekend and going into the next week to read through it, develop questions, and be prepared for the budget process. I would request that if, I would note first of all that the budget process is held in committee of the whole, not in finance committee, so everybody participates, and I would like to know in advance if and when people have a session that they're not able to attend, so that we can try to make sure that we have a good and strong attendance for each of the meetings. So, does anybody have any questions about the budget process? Okay, thank you. Item number 5, matters referred to committee.
Resolution 2023-0237, allocating capital funds in the total amount of $311,691.95 in support of the Veterans Service Commission of Cuyahoga County's headquarters project, funded from the Veterans Services Fund in 2022.
So, Trevor McAleer from our council staff is going to present this item.
Good afternoon, Finance Committee, Trevor McAleer, County Council staff. Matt Reimer from Public Works is also here if there's any specific questions related to the project of the build out for this building that we're referencing here in the legislation. So the resolution before you today would allocate 100% of the leftover dollars from the 2022 fiscal year for the Veterans Services Commission. That money is currently sitting in the council-created Veterans Services Fund, which council created that as a reminder in 2012. that any leftover dollars from the Veterans Services Commission's annual budget would be allocated the following year by this body for use to serve veterans. If council, as a reminder to council, that council approved the purchase of this building, which is located at 3950 Chester Avenue in April of 2022 in the amount of $1.8 million. Council that same year also allocated nearly $1 million from the 2020 Veteran Services Commission leftover dollars to help purchase that building. And then later last year, council allocated $3.1 million from the leftover funds of 2021 from the Veteran Services Commission to help build out the cost of this. The total project cost to build out the building is approximately $9.8 million. Public Works is still fine-tuning that, but that's the current approximate cost. Of that, the 3.1 that council authorized last year will go towards the build-out costs. The Veteran Services Commission last year also set aside $1.75 million of their annual budget. They're projected to set aside about $1 million this year. There might be a little bit left over at the end of this that would also go allocated towards that. The Veteran Services Commission is also budgeting $400,000 of next year's budget to help with the build-out. Public Works was able to identify approximately $440,000 of parking revenue because there's a pretty large parking lot associated with the building there at Chester Avenue to go towards the construction costs. And there's also an internal services fund for custodial and security that'll utilize the building as it's a county-owned building that could go towards the project costs. If this $311,000 is approved by this body, then that leaves a funding gap of about $2.6 million, which the Public Works Capital Fund will front those dollars to complete that gap, and then any leftover dollars from 2023, 2024, and maybe 2025 from the VSC would go back to reimburse the Public Works capital account. The Public Works anticipates that the contract for construction will come forward to this body earlier next year, and the work will be complete about the first quarter of 2025. So again, Matt Reimer from Public Works is here if there's any specific questions about the build out. But the request today is that 100% of last year's dollars goes towards this project.
Are there any questions by my colleagues? Councilman John.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I, for one, was the moving parties when this was created. And it was never, at least my intention at the time, that we would be using 100% of these funds for capital improvement of the Veteran Service Commission. So now what you're suggesting is that this will be, I think, 5 years, maybe 6, when we total it all up, of 100% of the funds. So none of these monies will be going towards veteran scholarship funds, homeless needs of veterans, PTSD, any of the other things that I, as one of the individuals, thought we were going to be doing with this, is providing gap funding to help in these other programs out there. And for us to be doing this for a 6-year period of time for nothing but 100% going into capital, it's clearly, I believe, violates the intent and the spirit of what we intend to do. I'll support it this year, but I will not be supporting it again after this.
Mr. Chairman, if I can add, so last year, council authorized $3.1 million from the 2021 leftover dollars towards the capital build out. They also, at that same time, approved about $1 million for services. So it wasn't full. The entire amount from 2021 did not go to capital. There was about $1 million that continued for services. Last year's number is a lot less than prior years, the $311,000. It's been north of $1 million, probably at least 4 out of the last 9 years that council's been doing this. So this is probably one of the smallest amounts that we've seen in terms of leftover dollars. But you're correct. The recommendation for 2022 leftover funds is that all of it would go towards the capital build out. This year, the Veteran Services Commission has already requested in that 1 million of their budget, which normally would have more likely been left over as a surplus, but we can't control what they do with their current operating budget, has already set aside $1 million for the build out. So again, that number would be less again this year because they've already proactively put $1 million. And I think you're going to see that in the next year or so until the project's completely funded.
And then just to follow up on that, then that means that that $1 million that's going to go from their fund directly into a capital fund is also not going to a veteran directly. It's
Directly,
going to a
for
building.
a service.
A building that the county is actually going to own. And if for some reason in the interim, at some point, this facility should become open, this is going to become back just opposite of what we intended. It's going to revert back in as county property. Thank you.
And if I could add, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Strawn is correct. The county is responsible to provide office space to the Veteran Services Commission. So if it was not coming out of this fund, an alternative funding source would have to be derived because the county did buy this building back in 2022.
Councilman Gallagher.
Councilman Strawn's correct. Maybe after this is all built out and built up, we can get these people to guarantee $1 million a year to back fund what they've taken out of what should be going to veterans. They're padding something, and they're not padding the services needed to the veterans. They're padding their offices. We're in charge of providing office space. Now it's turned into a building. Now it's turned into a build out. And we have veterans in need. I've spoken yearly and have been ignored for Dogs for Veterans. There are veterans in waiting lists waiting for service dogs. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing at least 10 dogs a year. And now we're doing whatever we're doing over there. These dollars should be paid back out of their budget into the fund to go to where they're needed most. And they're not needed most in luxurious offices. These people, as Councilman Strawn said, you got people living on the streets. You got people with problems. So I think they've had it easy since we've been here. When we came on, if I remember correctly, there's a big problem with this group, not this present group, but the way this group was handling the money or not handling the money correctly. And then Councilman Strawn had this fund set up. Now we're dipping into it. Seems counterproductive to what the main issue is.
So I'd like to note for the record the presence of council members Simon and Turner at the meeting. And my question to Mr. McAleer is when we were last providing the $1 million worth of services, did any of that money go to fund salaries, creating a problem where the lack of that kind of funding in this year's allocation is going to force people to be laid off?
Mr. Chairman, yes, the money from prior years did go towards salaries for specific awards. We have not heard any feedback in terms of any potential layoffs from that. I will add to your point, though, because the money has varied over the years. It's been as low as, I think the lowest year was about 200,000, and we had, I think, as high as 1.7 million in a given year. I think the one thing we've tried to do as council staff is when these vendors are getting these awards, that we've expressed to them that it changes year by year. It's not guaranteed every year because we don't know what the leftover amount will be from the Veteran Services Commission. I think we tried to at least put these vendors on notice year over year that this funding, and it has changed over the years.
And is there any reason why this resolution would need to be passed on second reading suspension, or can it go 3 readings?
It can go 3 readings.
Is there any further discussion? Ms. Simon.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just have a question about this. I agree with my colleagues. I mean, we all had our ideas when we pass this, and this now is run askew, and I'm not comfortable with it. But perhaps for this year, but we better be vigilant about this going forward. And it will be less money probably then going forward, because they'll be just holding on to the allocation for the purpose of this build-out, correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I heard you speak of reimbursement, that the county's going to actually advance funds is it the next budget cycle?
Yes, so I would probably ask Matt Ryburn to come up to speak specifically on that, but the goal is that the Public Works capital budget would fund the gap, and then the money that the Veteran Services Commission is going to set aside next year, and potentially any surplus dollars would reimburse the capital account for coming up with the funding gap of the $2.6 million. Matt, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Good afternoon, Matt Reimer with the Department of Public Works. Through the chair to Councilperson Simon. I am by no means a fiscal professional. However, typically when we've done appropriations in this way, it's either been out of the general fund capital subsidy or the general fund reserve, depending on the direction of leadership at the time, and then subject to reimbursement through a fiscal agenda action to transfer funds back into those general fund subsidy accounts.
And do you know, I might have missed it, how many years it's going to take to expect the reimbursement to come through for the 2 million plus?
I can take that one, Councilwoman. We're projecting at least right now $400,000 from the Veteran Services Commission budget for next year, based off the last couple years, that the amount that has been left over from the Veteran Services Commission. I think it should be covered by no later than 2025. So next year's 2024 surplus and potentially a portion of the 2025 year surplus.
We'll pay back the full amount
Should,
that we're advancing.
based off the prior year's trends.
Okay, thanks.
2 years ago, there was $1.7 million left over. So if that trend stays true, there should be enough going into 2025 to pay back the full amount.
Yes, Councilman Sean.
As long as Mr. Reimer's up there. If this were not to be done the way it's been discussed here, this would be funds coming out of Public Works from the general fund, which is an obligation of this county to do whatever it takes. If we're the ones that approved, I assume, the build-out and the property and the building management of what was going on in the Veteran Service Commission. Did we look at the building, the plan? And we did that, didn't we, in Public Works?
Through the chair to Councilman Schron. Yes, sir. Back in late 2021 and then into 2022 early year, we did a facility assessment of 2 properties. Leading us to this property was selected by, I believe, the VSC board, and then resulted in the legislation for the purchase of it. But we did do a pre-purchase assessment of that property and have been in design since the July 2022 timeframe.
At the time that you did that, and I believe you had some reviews with this body, did you ever tell us that this was going to be funded through the excess of funds coming out of the Veteran Service Commission that were going to veterans' actual programs?
Through the chair to Councilman Schron, I wouldn't have known that at that time. I wouldn't have been.
I don't think we were ever told that. That's the reason why you wouldn't have known. This is only subsequent that as we've gotten to it, and I believe that this is a funding source that should be coming from the general fund, which is what an obligation of this body is all about. And then the funds, the dollars to go to programming and programming process. We wouldn't do this with any other programs. We wouldn't do this with any of the health and human service issues. As far as if they needed something of that nature, we want the programs to be supported. And so therefore, every dollar we take out of their operation is a dollar that potentially is not going to a program for a veteran. So I am disappointed, and I'm going to actually highly suggest that we take this, that these funds should be done as the budgeting process and take out of our the capital funding for this from the general fund in the future. I'm not trying to suggest we go subsequent back there and pull it back, But going forward, it should not be, we should step up and do what we as a county are promised and obligated to do. Thank you. Because we have a hard time telling the other 87 counties that we're doing the right thing with excess funds, when in fact, we're just doing it out of our, we're just we're actually going backwards and clawing it back and putting this back into our general fund is what we're doing.
My only response would that be we'd execute the project as directed.
Not funded as we directed. I don't believe we directed. Again, we'll just circle back to, I don't believe at the beginning we were told that this was going to come out of the excess funds that were going to veterans programs.
Forgive me, in whatever decision comes out of the budget process, we would execute the project as intended.
Sure, going forward, yes.
Yes.
I understand that.
Yes.
Just, and when it was laid out initially, I don't believe that this was ever discussed as an alternative.
Councilman Strawn, if I can add to that, in 2022, when council appropriated $3.1 million from the 2021 leftover dollars for this project, it was not presented. We didn't know at the time how much the build out was going to be. So you're correct. It was not presented to you that additional years would be recommended be used, but the 3.1 million was presented to you.
Go back and check the record. I believe the 3.1 was presented to us as a one-time activity. And if that was my recollection of it as a one-time activity, and I said, okay, it's the home of where our Veteran Service Commission services are going to be delivered from. It was not that we're going to claw back all the rest of this for the next, till 2025.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion to refer this resolution to the full council for second reading?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to refer Resolution 2023-0237 to the full council for second reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and the resolution is so referred. And we have an item number 6 under discussion, and I would ask the clerk to please read the item.
The item for discussion is item K from Resolution 2023-0238. It's an appropriation increase of $574,537 for the county executive's office.
Okay, so my colleagues, I would bring to everybody's attention that this was an item that was peeled off of the last fiscal agenda, and it's up for discussion today. It does not require a motion because it's not in legislative form, but if following today's discussion, if we're generally satisfied with the presentation, then the item could be included in a future fiscal agenda.
Good afternoon,
Ms.
Chair.
Chief.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and council members. Katie Gallagher from the Executive Office. As you know, the executive budget includes executive communications, regional collaboration, and sustainability. I think Walter Parfiowicz, the OBM director, did a satisfactory job of explaining the changes that this included, additional staff, travel, furniture. This includes the Deputy Chief of Integrated Development, Special Counsel, Transportation, and Administrative Assistant, increased travel from this executive's office, as well as $3,000 in furniture specifically for chairs for the fellows, and specific registration fees for vendors and parking costs for those members of the community that have come for meetings in the executive office. The only thing I would add from Walter's response is that looking back over the last 2 years, the executive line item has seen decreases. 2021 going into 22, it was a decrease of 7%. 2022 going into 23, there was a decrease of 5%. So there is an uptick, but just historically the last couple of years, this budget has gone down.
And how much is the total budget?
Right now, it's 2.9 million.
And questions by my colleagues? Ms. Simon?
I can ask a question, thank you. Is this something that we can consider as part of the next budget cycle rather than pinch hitting here and punting on the back end of advancing these expenses?
Through the chair, this money needs to be appropriated in order to meet this year's budget needs.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure why these expenditures were authorized with knowing that the money wasn't here, it wasn't appropriated for chairs. I mean, where are these chairs, the fellow chairs? You said you bought $3,000 worth of chairs.
Through the chair, specifically the chairs, I think this is more of a learning process for some of the new executive employees. I know, Matt Reimer's not here. There was a request for chairs. The assumption would be that you would just take chairs. There's a lot of empty chairs in this building and just move them to the 8th floor. But Public Works went ahead and purchased 4 chairs.
For $3,000?
Correct, we do not, this is not the executive picking out particular chairs.
Mr. Chairman,
Sure,
I got it.
Mike Chambers.
Director.
Yes, once again, we've been in this building a long time.
For the could you put your name into the record, please?
Mike Chambers.
Thank you.
We've been in the building a long time, and what's been happening is as furniture is available, it's being moved around. So when the fellows came, and this is going on a long time, at one point in time, we had a person in the building in Public Works responsible. In the basement, we put all the excess furniture. It was supposed to be if it was under warranty, it got fixed, but unfortunately, we're past the warranty now. So we've been just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul on some of the furniture, and that's what happened. Some of the chairs were moved somewhere else because there was no one using them at the time, and now we have the fellows. It's just, we have to address that, and we're looking to do that more with the new budget as well. For example, you got the refrigerators in each of the floors. Some of these things are beginning to fail, and we haven't really put money aside for that. The chairs, once again, the warranty is the past. And that's the truth. Does that not make sense, or?
Well, I'm going to have to defer to my colleagues who sit on this committee, and I'll follow up. It doesn't really make sense to this council member.
The chairs do not have an endless useful life. They get worn out.
But the cost of the chairs, though, I mean, you guys don't see it's a $3,000 for 4 chairs and say, hey, what are you doing?
What I will tell
I mean,
you,
what are
though-
these, like, are they leather or something?
No,
Like,
no,
what's the-
they're the standard chairs that everyone's sitting in. There is a standard throughout. Everyone has the same furniture throughout this building. That was, I don't know what that cost is offhand. I'm sure it's probably more, in all honesty.
Let's, please, one at a time and through the chair. And we have, since you have the floor, we'll let you keep the floor, and Councilman Kelly is next.
Yeah, it seemed to me, it would seem to me that it would be, I don't know, we talk about appearances and, it's just a horrible look to be spending that kind of money on chairs. I know they're items that people need, but I just think the cost on that is just exorbitant. And
I will say that, and there is a standard. Everyone has the same chair. This isn't something special of a chair. These are ergonomical. They can be lifted. They can be lowered. I mean, those are the chairs that were built with this specification. Otherwise, this building would turn into a hodgepodge of everything else in here. And that's the standard I'm trying to say. We're keeping to that. Matt, you're back. Sorry.
Through the chair, forgive me for not knowing exactly the question, but we had submitted procurement. We do all of our procurements for furnishings in this building through state term contract to keep with the standard furniture package that was approved in the tenant improvements back when this building was moved into. And this was just a direct replacement in kind of 3 chairs that were, I think it was 3, going off of memory, 4 that were unserviceable to be reoccupied in the office areas on a certain section of the floor. These are the standard chairs, both in 2 cubicles and 2 offices that are outfitted throughout the rest of the building.
Anything further?
it might be time to just look at the list of suppliers to see if we could do better as far as maintaining the standards while getting a better cost. I just think that's exorbitant.
Through the chair.
Councilman Kelly. What? No, okay. Councilwoman Turner.
Okay, thank you, through the chair. So this is a standard replacement of chairs that we have throughout that department or spacing, and you want to be consistent with the furniture. So do we have a plan for like our, because it seems like it's probably more expensive per chair because you're only buying 4 chairs? Do we have a plan or a strategy to maybe buy them in bulk so the next time another department needs to replace a chair, we already have them and we're getting a better deal than just $1,000 or so a chair?
Through the chair to Councilperson Turner, yes, we have not needed that to date, or at least we haven't been tasked with that to date. There have been other agency-funded alterations to the building that have encompassed a little bit more quantity. This was for a specific need for employees that were coming inbound. But we do have in the capital plan that we submitted to OBM a refresh amount for tenant improvement refresh in this building, I believe in the 2025 capital year. If we choose, could do some of those tenant improvement furnishing replacements if needed, more in bulk.
Well, thank you for explaining, but I think that they should have just sat in a different type of chair until we were able to, execute the larger contract. That just seems like a lot to pay.
Ms. Simon.
I thought Councilman Kelly had some. No? Okay, thank you. The chairs just caught my eye. I'm sorry, that wasn't even the basis of my questioning. The main basis is the salaries, but I want to go back to the chairs for 1 minute. So I had asked, and I think some of you know, that the furniture in the old courthouse, in the basement, in the ladies' room is abhorrent. It is disgusting. The couch is probably 1,000,000 years old. It looks like there's birds nesting and mice in there, if I could guess. And this is where the domestic violence victims have to go when they go to court. It's disgusting. So when I'm hearing, and I was willing to look at used furniture and do all these budgetary things to save the county money so it's presentable and maybe have I think they did a coat of paint. Now that I hear that these fellows are getting $1,000 chairs, that's not acceptable to me, and that's what struck me about the chairs. So I'm going to ask that part of your capital budget include a complete makeover of that bathroom in the basement at the old courthouse, where we have neglected for probably 25 years. And I have pictures of this couch in my phone. I take it with me, and it's my fault for not going to the used furniture place with a conscientious employee, but I think at this point we should get new furniture for the DV area in our old courthouse where the domestic relations court is.
If I may, through the chair to Councilperson Simon, yes, I look forward to you reading our capital plan submission because we're investing extensively into the old courthouse as proposed in that plan, and I'll make sure that as part of that investment we have that scope added.
I think you should have some women walk through there because I'm in there and there's no place to hang my purse on the hooks. These are small things that probably you guys wouldn't notice, but so maybe get.
I'm somewhat familiar with the area.
Or I could be your
I'd love to walk
ambassador to go through there. Okay. Back to this very quickly, the personnel services, it's $531,000. Do we have a list of those who were hired and what their salary is to come before us when we consider this? And I'm not sure without that we can just carte blanche say yes, because this was all done, hired all these people at higher rates without having the budget to support it. I'm not sure how that happened so quickly without any council input.
Through the chair, I would say that I can have Walter send a list with salaries.
Thank you.
Councilman Tuma.
Yeah. So, yeah, we definitely need a list before we go forward with anything on this because I don't even know who these people are. Why wouldn't this stuff have been taken out of the current budget? I just don't understand that. That would have been standard practice to look at your budget, see what you can do, and then moving forward next year, if more monies were necessary or needed, something you ask council for.
Through the chair, well, some of these costs have gone through Board of Control, specifically travel-related costs. Like, for example, just today, somebody from the executive office was approved for a travel-related cost. So some of these items do go through Board of Control. As far as the salaries go, I would just say that I could advise the chief of staff going further that before any adjustments are made, that we will add to that. We do not foresee any additional staff being added that is not in the budget list for next year, with the exception of the Regional Collaboration Director.
I appreciate it.
Councilman Gallagher?
So, do you know off the top of your head how many vacancies we have in the county?
Off the top of my head, no, I do not.
Because like a year, maybe a year and a half ago, there were 500.
Yeah, I think it was 750 when we put in for the Ernst & Young study. However, that gap has closed dramatically. There's 300 more employees than there was at the tail end of last year.
So why are we asking for more money?
This is for the line item for the executive.
Yeah, I just have numbers in front of me, and it's very difficult to understand what the ask is here.
Okay, well,
And with 300 or 400 vacancies, it would seem to me the overall budget could handle this. We're really talking 90 days here. I've been here since the beginning. This is the first time that I've had anything like this happen, especially this close to a budget hearing.
through the chair, will the OBM director answer that question.
I anticipated.
Walter Parfiowitz from the Budget Office. Councilman Gallagher, I believe we could accomplish some of this through realignments from other departments that aren't spending their funds.
Then why don't we? Because we're only talking 90 days before we can flesh all of this out, go through it, because we have a new administration that's never been through this process before. It, as you know, we get into the weeds, and it's not always pretty, and it's sausage making. And this seems to be pre-sausage making. I want to be sure where we're going as we move forward. I've sat back since the administration's been on board, and I've been watching and hearing about programs and all kinds of things which sound great. And the first question in my head, which always is, how are we going to pay for that? And now I have this 90 days before a new year where we can, and days before our hearings. I don't understand. This to me is odd. Chairs, I'm not too worried about. I know chairs are expensive, but I do want to break down on what we're talking about there, because I don't want to vote on something I don't know what we're voting on. But when we don't have fellows, but we'll have students come in and work for a summer or whatever and pick a chair. Not a problem. You know, we had extra space upstairs, that's fine. Grab a chair and go sit down. But I understand things wear out. These have been here from day one. They haven't worn out. So, you know, we're going to get into this. This seems to be a preemptive strike before the budget hearings. This seems to be ripe for budget hearings. And if there's money available and you need it, I don't think we'll stand in your way to use it. But to give you new money, I don't get it.
Councilman Gallagher, we will submit a realignment request on the next fiscal agenda.
I just, like I said, you know, I understand the administration's new. We've had difficult budgets in the past where the council has absolutely not agreed with the administration and have redone budgets and returned budgets that the administration didn't want to see, but that's what they got. So times are going to get tough, as I think we all know, well, they've already started. They're very tough. We're having a hard time putting people into jobs here. I hope and anticipate as things get rougher out there that those jobs will get filled. but it seems that you have the availability of the dollars before we hit the budget. Because I can tell you, there's going to be some serious questions about this budget for everybody, not just, you know, for chairs and things like that. I anticipate bad days ahead. So if I could have a breakdown, that would be really good.
Of course.
Okay, Councilman Tron?
Thank you. And I raised my hand a couple of times, Katie saw me, but yeah.
I must have been looking.
That's okay, not a problem. It was the same point that Councilman Gallagher raised as far as, you heard we start next week, so it's only a week till the budget. And again, there's no reason in the world that this can't be handled in the budgeting process, it seems to me. And chairs, I hate to say it, but not they're irrelevant, but I'll bet you the chair we're all sitting here probably $650, whether we like it or not. And then you add inflation since these chairs were bought, the $750 is probably, I'll bet you if we went out in the street and bought that, so I'm not the least bit worried about that as far as what it is, because I'd be willing to bet commercial chairs are going to be in that kind of range out there. So, and the only point is, if we are getting to the end of the useful life of a lot of this, I hope that we see it in the budget. I mean, that's the time. If we, and I know our chairs aren't wearing out because we only sit in it, you know, that infrequently as far as from that standpoint. We don't sit in 27 days a week or 5 days a week. And, so if we are looking through and we are seeing chairs that are broken, and let's get ready to do that capital budget. It should be in this year's budget. And as a matter of fact, good budgeting says that you plan, I'm sorry, but good budgeting says you plan for items to fail, and you have an allocation for that, so that every 3 to 5 years you're replacing whatever that happens to be.
Councilman Strawn, I believe you'll see a significant increase in capital budgeting this
I'm
year.
not looking for significant. Don't misunderstand. I was not throwing food to the fire out there, fuel to the fire, but it was that it should be part of a natural process. I mean, you do painting of a room every 3 to 5 years. You do carpet. I mean, all these things have to be in the long-term budgeting process from that standpoint, because it wears out.
Chief Gallagher is a firm believer in that as well, so.
Yeah, oh, good. Well, I just think it's part of the process. So it's better not to have surprises than it is to just have a natural routine. And whatever the useful life is of a chair, have it in the budget. Whatever the useful life of the carpet is, probably 12 to 15 years, my assumption would be, so on and so forth. It should not be any surprises that all of a sudden we get this shock that we have to replace all the carpet in the whole building, and we haven't done on a reoccurring basis. Thank you.
So, Chief Gallagher, one thing that I've heard talk about is that in putting together the executive staffing, that you kept a lot of the same people from the previous administration, plus you added new people in various roles. And so I would just like if you could say a little bit about the overall strategy about how the executive office staffing is put together and what you're trying to accomplish.
To the chair, at this point, I think the executive has hit a point where he knows the direction that he would like to go. There is something to be said about institutional knowledge and making sure that there is some that is still present in the executive office, but as well as meeting the needs of the areas where he believes, like my own job in operations, that we continue to make a dent in those areas where we're serving residents. So that's why you've seen some of these changes. Speaking to the old chief of staff, spans of control were one of the issues that he said he struggled with. Having so many direct reports is very cumbersome and not always the most efficient or effective manner of managing people when you're seeing, at least 10 people do direct reports a week. It's hard to manage sometimes. So listening from some of the prior experiences, this is to the point where we've gotten.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Simon.
Just to follow up to the chief, I just want to be clear, when you go to the Board of Control with items and there's not money there, there's not funds available, is that articulated to my colleagues who sit on the Board of Control? When you're putting items through, is it obvious that the money's not in the budget to support this expenditure?
At some points, yes. The one I spoke about this morning, it wasn't a call out saying that there wasn't enough money in the executive budget, no.
Is that something that, I don't sit on that committee. I'll just leave that to the people who sit on it from this body to see if that's something they would want articulated when there's a request. Yeah, okay, I hope this all goes through the budget. We get a list from Walter of all the salaries, and then we should be incorporating that when we look at the overall budget strategy.
So, not seeing anything else, the sense that I'm getting is that number one, we would like to have a granular list of everything that was in this request, including the salary positions and the amounts and the items that are non-salary items, what the specific items are and the amounts, so that we all know exactly what was in with this. And it sounds like, it sounds to me like there's a consensus that this item can be included in the next fiscal agenda, but that it would be done as a realignment rather than a new appropriation. So that's
Thank you, Mr.
what
Chair.
I'm hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any further questions?
Does that work for the administration?
It does, thank you.
Oh, okay. No further questions. That concludes this item. Is there any miscellaneous business? Hearing none and with nothing holding our attention, we stand adjourned.